The desert where the will is tested, the desert wind scrubs the bones of the proud. Here, where no fruit grows and no voice comforts, a man learns the weight of his own will. It rises like Pharaoh's chariot against him, demanding to be obeyed. But the word declares, "He that loses his life for my sake shall find it." This is the first sword thrust, to lose what you cling to kill the tyrant within. I have walked valleys where the fig tree bore no blossom, where the olive failed, where the vine gave nothing. And still I heard the echo of Habakkuk yet. I will rejoice in the Lord, I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. Rejoice not when the body is fed, but when it is emptied, for the wilderness is not a curse, it is the forge. The warrior who fears hunger will betray his promise at the first smell of bread. The soldier who shakes before thirst will lay down his shield before the battle trumpet sounds. But the one who drinks the cup the Lord places before him, bitter though it burns the tongue, that man is unshaken. Not my will, but yours be done. Luke chapter 22, verse 4-2. Here lies the promise. Your will must be nailed upon the cross, or it will nail you down in chains. I tell you this with blood on my hands and ash in my mouth. Your will is not your freedom, it is your Pharaoh. It will drive you back to Egypt, back to slavery, back to chains polished with gold. But if you will take up the hammer and drive the nails, if you will lay that will upon the wood, you will hear the veil tear, you will see the temple shake, and freedom will rush in like a river through broken gates. And again the psalm writer cried with fire, "Blessed be the Lord my strength, which teaches my hands to war and my fingers to fight." Psalm chapter 144, verse 1. But his first battle was not against people. It was against himself, against the voice that said, "Take ease, eat, drink, be merry," against the whisper that urged, "Bow to the idols of comfort. Kneel before the shrines of self." He broke that voice upon the rock of obedience, and with harp and sword he became the man after God's own heart. So, too must you. Your sword will not shine until your pride is ground to dust. Your shield will not hold until your heart is emptied of rebellion. And when the enemy comes in like a flood, you will stand not because you are strong, but because you are crucified. For the dead man fears nothing, the dead man obeys without question. And the Spirit that raised Christ from the grave breathes fire into the bones of the crucified. Therefore I say, crucify your will. Strike the nail through desire, bind rebellion to the altar, and rise not as servant of self, but as soldier of the living God. The covenant written in blood, the man who cannot rule his spirit is already defeated. No enemy needs to break through his walls. The gates stand open and the shadows march in without challenge. Emotions left wild do not remain small. They multiply. They sharpen themselves against your weakness until they strike at the hour of trial. Discipline is the stone and cement of your fortress. It is the watchtower that never sleeps, the lamp that does not go out, the hand on the sword even in silence. Without it, the smallest spark of anger becomes wildfire. The faintest whisper of fear becomes an avalanche. The quiet seed of envy becomes a forest of ruin. He that has no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28. To master your emotions is to rebuild the walls of your soul stone by stone. Each refusal of temptation is a brick laid. Each prayer spoken instead of anger is a gate made stronger. Each act of obedience is a tower raised against the storm. But here I command you to stop. Do not look outward to the enemies at your gate. Look inward. What sign, what chain still holds your sword arm from striking? Name it, and you have already dragged it into the light. Hide it, and it will rule you. Every man carries chains, but only the disciplined drag them to the altar, where they can be broken. The watchman on the wall does not sleep because the enemy prowls always. So, too, must you keep watch over your spirit. Guard your heart when no one sees. Command your emotions when no one hears. For discipline is not a single battle won. It is a war fought daily in silence. The Templar did not wait for the field of blood to learn self-control. They mastered their hearts in the monastery, in prayer, in fasting, in the hours when the world thought them doing nothing. So when the trumpet called, they did not tremble, for they had already fought the greater war within. This is your task, to wrestle the storm of your emotions until they obey, to seize your anger and turn it to courage, to seize your grief and turn it to steadiness, to seize your fear and make it fuel for faith. Hell trembles not at the man with sharp steel, but at the man with a sharp spirit. For even if his sword breaks, his will remains, and no darkness can break through such walls. The watchman who guards the heart the wilderness does not lie. It strips a man of his lies, tears away the garments of pride, and leaves him bare before the eyes of the Almighty. Gold cannot bribe the desert, titles cannot command its silence. Only the soul remains, shaking beneath the gaze of the Eternal. It is here you discover the weight of covenant. Not the covenant made by lips, but the covenant sealed in blood. The covenant of Abraham who tied his son upon the altar and raised the knife with shaking hands. The covenant of Christ who carried his cross up Golgotha, stumbling yet unyielding until wood and nails swallowed him whole. Both point to the same fire, obedience unto death. For the will is tricky. It covers rebellion in holy garments, disguises selfishness as freedom. It whispers, surely God does not require this of you. Surely the burden can be lighter, the path shorter. But remember the garden where Eve listened to the serpent's advice and reached for what was forbidden. What she thought was freedom became chains, and what she thought was wisdom became death. The heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Who can know it? Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. Here is the battlefield most men will never face, the war within their own chest. For it is easier to strike an enemy with the sword than to kill the rebellion of the heart. It is easier to build walls of stone than to tear down the idols of pride. But until the altar burns with your own surrender, you will remain a slave dressed as a soldier. The watchman upon the tower does not sleep, for the enemy comes in shadows. And the greatest shadow is not cast from outside, but from within. So rise in the night, sharpen your soul upon the word, and cry aloud as the psalm writer did. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. For only the refiner's fire can reveal whether your offering is gold or stubble, obedience or pretending. I say this not to comfort you, but to cut you. For the blade of truth must pierce before the healing can come. The surgeon's hand is steady, and the Lord who wounds also binds. As Isaiah thundered, he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. If Christ carried the weight of your sin upon his shoulders, how can you still hold to your will as if it were a crown? No, it must die, not half killed, not wounded, but crucified. And when it hangs there bleeding upon the wood, then the Spirit of God will breathe life where death once ruled. The desert will blossom like the rose. The wilderness will break open with streams of living water. And the man who once held to his own shall rise as a servant, his strength not his own, his heart bound forever in covenant flame. The cross that commands obedience, the trumpet will sound, and every hidden thing will be shown. No mask will remain, no secret will be sheltered. The books shall be opened, and the judge of all the earth will weigh the hearts of men, not by their crowns, not by their victories, but by their obedience. For what is a man who conquers nations, yet is enslaved to himself? What is a warrior who splits shields, yet bows before the idol of his own desire? Dust, chaff, shadows cast upon the wall of eternity. But the one who kills his will, who bows his neck beneath the yoke of Christ, that man shines like a pillar in the temple of God. Do not think this path is soft, the cross splinters, the nails tear, the blood stains. But there is no crown without the thorns, no resurrection without the grave. Did not Paul declare with fire, I die daily? And again, I am crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. This is not poetry. This is warfare. If any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. Gospel of Luke chapter 9, verse 23. Hear the call, O man of dust. Deny yourself not in word but in blood. Take up your cross not once but daily. Follow though the road is steep, though the night is long, though the body protests with every step. For the shepherd leads through the valley of the shadow, yet his rod and staff are strength to the faithful. And when the enemy surrounds you, when the lions roar and the furnace burns 7 times hotter, lift your eyes. The Son of Man walks in the fire. The gates of brass break. The walls of Jericho crumble at the sound of holy trumpets. And the Lamb who was killed rules as lion upon Zion's hill. So let your will remain nailed to the wood. Let the blood of the covenant mark your doorpost. Let the Spirit of the living God fill your lungs with the breath of resurrection. For when the King returns clothed in fire and crowned with many crowns, he will not ask whether you pleased yourself, but whether you obeyed. Therefore rise. Bind yourself to the altar. Drink the cup, though it burns. Last through the cross, though it breaks. For beyond the grave is glory. Beyond the night is dawn. Beyond the killing of your will is the eternal kingdom prepared for those who overcome. And on that day the faithful shall cry aloud, "You have bought us back to God by your blood out of every family and tongue and people and nation." Revelation chapter 5 verse 9. So take your promise and carve it upon your soul. You shall kill your will, and in its death you shall rise eternal.